wiping out kids, okay? Like, we're paying attention. And he was there too. And he, even more than yours truly, had his finger on the pulse of what young Republicans wanted, what young conservatives were feeling. And they were already against the war. You know, the Democrats went long ago against. All of the independents had turned by the summer before when Charlie was killed. And the young Republicans were turning in huge numbers. And he knew it. He had done a forum with young Republicans talking about exactly that. And it's out there. You can see it. You can Google it.
Megyn Kelly appeared on the Hodge Twins podcast. And what happened during that interview set off one of the biggest waves of online debate this story has seen in months. When one of the hosts asked Kelly if she believed one of America's closest allies could have had anything to do with Charlie Kirk's passing, she didn't simply reject the idea. She didn't brush the question aside or label it a conspiracy theory. Instead, her answer was short and direct. I don't know.
Lockstep, and I knew Charlie very well, and we talked about this a lot, so I know what I'm talking about. But he and I were in exactly the same place. We had both been very, very pro in a way that was totally unquestioning and deeply loyal. And then after Gaza, and it just went on, we both sort of got to the point where it was like, okay, like enough. You know, your most ardent fans looked the other way for a long time, but it's gone on too long. It's gotten too brutal. You don't get an unending pass on brutality.
She explained that she is not prepared to make that claim without solid evidence, and that she would need clear, credible proof before reaching any conclusion. At the same time, she also made it clear she is not ruling out any possibility if reliable evidence were ever to emerge, including the possibility of foreign involvement.
And so Charlie was starting to turn. He was starting to turn on Israel. And he did not appreciate the pressure he was under from his donors to not turn and to not platform people like Tucker, who had already turned. He didn't appreciate it. He resented it. He was thinking about giving back their donations. And there was a question about which way Turning Point was going to go. Because, you know, the Republican Party was divided in two. Was Turning Point going to choose a side? And was it going to be, quote, the wrong side, you know, in the minds of his, like, deeply devoutly pro donors? And he died before that was resolved.
Those three words, I don't know, hit social media hard. Not because they confirmed anything, but because of who said them, the question she was responding to, and the wider discussion surrounding the publicly reported details of Charlie Kirk's final months. For many people watching, it stood out because Megyn Kelly is not Candace Owens, making her response draw even more attention online. If you'd like, I can also rewrite the next chunk in the same style so the entire script stays consistent. She is not an online personality trying to grow an audience by chasing controversy. She is a former Fox News anchor with a huge platform, a well-known professional connection to Charlie Kirk, and a reputation for saying she wants the facts before making serious claims.
And speak out clearly enough against anti-Semitism so we can prevent another tragedy.
Yes, sir. First of all, I'm so sorry. You and I are a part of a very small club. Painful. But you're in good company, and I will pray for you.
Because of that, when she says she is not ready to rule something out, people hear it very differently than they would if the same words came from an anonymous account on X. That difference is a big reason her comments spread so quickly across social media. This story is about what Megyn Kelly actually said, what the publicly available record behind her cautious approach looks like, what Erika Kirk's public statements and moments when she has chosen not to comment may suggest about the direction of the organization.
How could you hate the people? Why? Because you need to fulfill a conspiracy theory? I'm wrapped in, people say I'm a part of conspiracy theories all the time. It's sick, and it needs to stop. We are human. No one is perfect. No Christian is perfect. No Jew is perfect. No Muslim is perfect. We are broken, sinful humans in need of a Lord and Savior. And that's why it is so important to give your life to the Lord.
And why many people continue discussing the gap they see between Charlie Kirk's authenticated final public words and Erika's current public messaging. That conversation has become one of the biggest unanswered topics for many people following the conservative movement. Let's start with what Megyn Kelly has publicly said, because the full record of her comments on this story goes much deeper than any short viral clip can show. On August 6, 2025, a little over a month before Charlie Kirk's passing, Megyn Kelly appeared on her own show with Charlie, and the two openly pushed back against what they described as pressure from some supporters of Israel to offer unconditional backing at all times.
Because once you do that and you fully surrender to the Lord, you have no room in your heart for hate. And so, sir, I am so sorry what happened to your daughter. I pray that does not happen, and I pray that that is something that we can somehow extinguish in this world. But we are living in enemy-occupied territory, and every single day we need to guard ourselves, guard our minds, guard our heart, and the best way to do that is reading God's Word. And you cannot separate the Old Testament from the New Testament. You cannot.
They also discussed being accused of anti-Semitism or having their character questioned whenever they criticized policies of the Israeli government. That conversation quickly caught people's attention. The episode is publicly available and has been widely shared. During the discussion, Megyn Kelly and Charlie Kirk said on camera that they believed they were facing what they described as a campaign of moral pressure aimed at discouraging criticism of the policies of a foreign government. Their comments became an important part of the wider public conversation surrounding the issue. That interview took place on August 6, 2025. Just over a month later, on September 10, 2025, Charlie Kirk passed away.
Sucks, doesn't it? Hate is hate. It's evil. Charlie and I have always been very clear on our stance. It's people. It's awful. Awful. Anti-Semitism is what healing factor comes out of hating people? What healing factor comes out of hating?
Afterward, the Megyn Kelly Show TikTok account shared a clip that received more than 26,600 likes and 775 comments. The caption read, "Megyn Kelly reveals video of what Charlie Kirk told Tucker about Israel before Turning Point event, drawing major attention across social media." The clip highlighted Kelly's account of separate conversations in which Charlie was discussing donor pressure, his views on Israel-related policy issues, and the direction of Turning Point USA during discussions with Tucker Carlson. Those comments quickly became another widely discussed part of the broader public conversation surrounding the story. Kelly said that in Charlie Kirk's final months, she believed his thinking was changing and moving closer to positions that voices like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson had been expressing more openly. She shared that perspective while reflecting on conversations and public discussions from that period, adding another layer to the ongoing debate. Then, during the Glendale stop of her Megyn Kelly live tour in November 2025,
Anything specific that Turning Point can do to combat
Yeah, so we are on we're all of our college campus and high school campuses. We have these conversations, and our students understand exactly my heart and Charlie's heart and the sentiment of everything I just said. We have Shabbat dinner happening at AmFest. We have individuals in our chapters who are Jewish. We have people that are going to be having booths. We have an exhibit hall at AmFest that are Jewish, that have Jewish organizations. The only way to combat evil, just like Charlie did, is with dialogue and not being afraid to do it.
Kelly became emotional on stage alongside Erika Kirk. Through tears, she described Charlie as someone who seemed closer to God than the rest of us. It was a heartfelt tribute that many people remembered. But by mid-2026, that same Megyn Kelly was telling the Hodge twins, "I don't know," when asked about speculation regarding possible foreign involvement. That shift in her public comments from an emotional tribute to a more cautious, evidence-focused stance that left questions open pending credible proof quickly became a major topic of discussion online. Supporters of Kelly's cautious approach have pointed to several publicly discussed sources that they believe provide important context for her comments. These include a June 2026 investigative report by the Gray Zone, public statements from Candace Owens, and comments from Andrew Colvet regarding text messages attributed to Charlie Kirk.
What healing factor comes out? Hate in general, nothing. Nothing. Charlie always would say very clearly, who hate was brain rot. He would always say it. We've been to Israel twice together. And to be able to walk in the place where our Lord walked and see the Bible come to life in Technicolor, how could you hate that place?
Together, those sources have fueled intense debate online, although many of the claims and interpretations surrounding them remain disputed and should not be treated as established fact. According to those public accounts, Charlie Kirk was facing significant pressure from some donors and political allies over his views on Israeli government policy in the weeks before his passing. Some reports and commentators have claimed that he declined additional funding for Turning Point USA tied to Israel-related priorities, was considering declining an invitation from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to visit Jerusalem, and was giving speaking opportunities at Turning Point USA events to high-profile critics of Israeli government policies, including Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, and comedian Dave Smith. Those reported developments became a major focus of public discussion and ongoing speculation. According to publicly reported accounts, on September 6th, 2025, 4 days before Charlie Kirk's passing, a private gala in Los Angeles became the center of another major controversy. Reports stated that donor Robert Shillman criticized Charlie from the stage, expressing disappointment with the direction of Turning Point USA and saying he regretted supporting the organization because of what he viewed as Charlie's changing position on Israel.
You have these things that are being said, you need to counter it with the truth. And if you don't, there's a void and a vacuum. And so even though they're a small number, they get louder and louder. So we need to do our best, which we're doing our part. We're going to continue to do our part to make sure that the truth is always heard. We'll amplify it even more. And we're going to do the best we can, but we need the whole community. We need everyone in on that.
Bob, thank you so much.
The reported remarks quickly became a major topic of discussion. Public reporting and materials shared afterward also stated that Shillman had withdrawn a $2 million annual donation. Supporters of this account have pointed to text messages attributed to Charlie Kirk as evidence. In those messages, Charlie reportedly wrote, "Just lost another huge Jewish donor, $2 million a year, because we won't cancel Tucker. Jewish donors play into all the stereotypes. I cannot and will not be bullied like this, leaving me no choice but to leave the pro-Israel cause." Those reported messages have since become a central part of the broader public debate surrounding the events of that period. 4 days after Robert Shillman reportedly criticized Charlie Kirk at that private gala, Charlie Kirk passed away.
Candace, I have no idea. I think what he was saying in that text, he's like, keep coming at me, bro, and let's see what happens, right? And Charlie was wonderfully defiant. He was wonderfully independent, and he would not, he believed in the freedom of speech, and he felt like he deserved, as a friend of his over many years, the right to speak out and have criticism. I will say one other thing is that he's loyal. Charlie was loyal to people that he had shared history with, right? He was asked, I think this may be what you were about to say, Blake. He was asked about Candace before in public, and he would always say,
that timeline has become one of the most closely examined parts of the broader public discussion, with many commentators pointing to it while debating the events leading up to his death. Megyn Kelly was familiar with that period because she was publicly involved in many of the same political circles. She appeared at Turning Point USA events, and her name had been part of the wider debate over the organization's direction. So when she answered, "I don't know," in response to speculation about possible foreign involvement, many people viewed her comments through the lens of those public events. Her response did not endorse any theory, but it also reflected her stated position that she would want credible evidence before reaching a conclusion. Now let's look at what Erika Kirk has publicly said about these events, because many online discussions have focused on comparing the documented public record with her own statements and the questions that supporters and critics continue to raise. At the CBS Town Hall on December 13th, 2025, alongside Bari Weiss, Erika Kirk spoke about how she and Charlie had long supported Israel, its people, and the relationship they believed was important. She also said that, in her view, some of the criticism aimed at Israel had gone too far.
he would never say an ill word about her. And if people, tried to force him to do that about Tucker or whatever, he would always be defiant because he didn't want to be morally blackmailed.
Exactly. Charlie was loyal to people who had ever been friends to him, whether it was very old donors or just people who had worked with Turning Point.
Yep.
And as long as they were not attacking him, he would not air any dirty laundry or, frankly, any disagreements he had with people. He did disagree with Candace on the bill issue. He disagreed with Tucker.
Those remarks immediately sparked strong reactions from people across the political spectrum. Supporters praised Erika for continuing what they saw as Charlie's long-standing conservative pro-Israel approach. Critics, however, argued that her comments did not fully align with positions they believed Charlie had expressed during his final months. That disagreement quickly became another major point of debate online, with both sides pointing to different public statements and records to support their views. Many viewers who felt Erika's answers were carefully delivered, but stopped short of directly addressing certain questions, said their reaction came from that specific contrast between her public messaging and the broader discussion surrounding Charlie's final months. When Charlie Kirk appeared on the Megyn Kelly Show on August 6th, 2025, and the discussion turned to donor pressure related to Israel, he did not give a cautious or carefully worded response. Instead, he spoke forcefully about what he believed was happening.
I feel for Erika because I don't think Charlie was having an easy time of that.
Mm-hmm.
And Erika certainly is not going to be having an easy time with that. She's left with Charlie's messaging, which was no war with Iran, but that anti-Semitism is brain rot, and probably in no condition to discern what exactly is anti-Semitism and what's not, because people are conflating that right now. They're expanding that term as we speak to include any criticism.
He argued that the pressure amounted to what he described as moral blackmail, saying his character was being questioned because he would not offer unconditional support for the policies of a foreign government. His remarks stood out and quickly became a major topic of discussion. Charlie made those comments on a national platform with Megyn Kelly sitting beside him during the interview. For many viewers, that moment reflected how direct he could be when speaking about issues he felt strongly about. Months later, Erika Kirk appeared at a CBS town hall and offered her own perspective. Some online critics argued that her responses were much more measured and differed from the tone Charlie had used in his final public appearances. Those comparisons have remained part of the ongoing public debate, although opinions vary widely. The online reaction to Erika's appearance was immediate. Some viewers questioned whether her answers were specific enough. One comment read, "Is it just me, or does she never seem to answer questions directly?" Another asked, "Hold the phone. When did Charlie start liking CBS and mainstream news?" Those reactions reflected the broader discussion taking place across social media rather than any established conclusion. That question reflected the views of people who remembered Charlie Kirk's long history of publicly criticizing CBS and other mainstream media outlets. When Erika Kirk chose CBS for one of her first major interviews after Charlie's passing, some viewers compared that decision with Charlie's past statements and formed their own opinions about what it might mean. The choice sparked plenty of discussion online.
That he's leaving him no choice but to leave the proposal set. Here's what I want people to know. Charlie said these things publicly and privately to us, like that he was frustrated. He would say something like that, and then he would go in a public situation and he would strike a more moderate tone. And we can blow the brakes if we have to.
No, I wouldn't frame it that way. I would say he was frustrated because he didn't like we can get into this actually once we get past the break here.
Well, no, it's fine. What I'm saying,
Erika's decision to also speak with the New York Times after Charlie's passing led to a similar reaction from many of the same commentators. People who had closely followed Charlie's years of public criticism of the newspaper argued that the interview signaled a different approach to media engagement. Others viewed it simply as an opportunity to reach a broader audience. The differing interpretations became another source of debate across social media. Many people also pointed out that Megyn Kelly has spoken publicly in greater detail about the donor pressure Charlie said he was facing than Erika has addressed herself. Some critics argue that if Charlie believed he was facing financial pressure over his public positions, as reflected in publicly discussed text messages attributed to him and comments from his former spokesperson, that issue extends beyond a private family matter and remains a subject of legitimate public interest. Others dispute those interpretations, making it an issue that continues to generate discussion rather than settled conclusions. For many observers, this has become a bigger question than any single interview. They are asking what Turning Point USA represented under Charlie Kirk, how the organization may be changing, and whether Erika Kirk is continuing the direction Charlie publicly outlined or taking it down a different path.
But like the point when I say moderate tone, when he would say something off the cuff, maybe to you or to me or to some other friend, like his public statements, he would kind of strike just a little bit more tender tone, if you will. And so here's the thing. I looked at that moment as like he's just blowing off steam. He's frustrated. He's venting, right? And I just want to say, like, he made that very clear under any circumstances that he was not going to be cowed or bullied into deplatforming Tucker, for example. He made that expressly clear to us.
Supporters and critics have reached very different conclusions, making it one of the most debated topics surrounding the organization. Now let's look at Erika's public political decisions, because this is where many commentators believe a clearer pattern begins to emerge. In May 2026, Erika publicly endorsed Spencer Pratt in his campaign for mayor of Los Angeles. She released a written statement explaining why she supported him, saying, regardless of the outcome of Spencer Pratt's race, what he's doing is authentically American. See a problem, become a part of the solution. His campaign ads are unconventional, but that's the point. It's refreshing. Instead of speaking like a career politician, he's speaking as an American who sees and deeply understands how fragile the simple things in life are when leadership fails. This is what this country's all about. Citizens willing to step into the political arena unafraid and challenge a failing system, much like the one that has destroyed Los Angeles. I hope moments like this inspire more Americans to throw their names into the mix. The endorsement quickly attracted attention online, with supporters praising her message and critics debating what it might signal about the future direction of her public leadership and political priorities. Spencer Pratt has publicly expressed pro-Israel views, and his campaign received support from several figures who are widely seen as aligned with the pro-Israel political establishment.
For most of her adult life has not been a political figure. She's been a wife, she was reality TV, she was a realtor. Like, she hasn't been in the business. This is complex stuff,
Right.
even for me. And I've been in law and politics for a long time, decades. So I just think she's probably, and I haven't talked to her about this, but I think she's probably, I don't know, feeling the ground under her feet moving and not wanting to do anything that's going to undermine her husband's organization, and doing her best to just hold whatever factions she can together so that they don't turn on Turning Point. You know, like, I think based on what we saw at
Because of that, Erika Kirk's endorsement quickly caught the attention of people closely following her public positions. For many of them, the focus was not only on who she chose to support, but also on who she did not publicly back during the same period. One name that frequently came up in those discussions was Representative Thomas Massie of Kentucky. Charlie Kirk had publicly praised Massie on multiple occasions, calling him one of my favorite members of Congress, including during appearances as recently as April 2024. Then on May 19, 2026, Massie lost his Republican primary in what was widely reported as the most expensive U.S. House primary race on record, with more than $32 million spent on advertising. That timing led many online commentators to compare Erika's endorsement choices with Charlie's earlier public support, adding another layer to the ongoing debate. During that Republican primary, President Trump traveled to Kentucky and publicly criticized Thomas Massie at a campaign event. Turning Point Action also shared messages on X supporting those criticisms. At the same time, Massie had become one of the most outspoken members of Congress, calling for the release of additional government files. He introduced the Files Transparency Act and supported legislation aimed at forcing a House vote despite objections from Republican leadership. Those actions kept him at the center of a heated political fight. Massie ultimately lost the primary in a race that was widely reported as one of the most expensive U.S. House primaries ever, with major outside spending drawing national attention.
December, AmFest, she would like to keep both factions under the Turning Point roof. I don't know whether it's possible.
Yeah.
And I think she'd like to keep those pro-donors on board and not lose the non-interventionalist section of the party. And I don't know whether that's possible either. So that's, you asked me why she hasn't said anything about it. That's my guess, without having spoken to her directly.
So do you think Charlie Kirk was a coincidence at that point in time where he was starting to turn against his? You think it was just a coincidence?
I don't know.
Around the same period, Erika Kirk publicly endorsed Spencer Pratt in the Los Angeles mayoral race. Some online commentators highlighted that contrast, with one person writing, "Erika will come out for Spencer Pratt, but won't show support for Charlie's favorite congressman." That observation reflected a comparison between Erika's public endorsements and Charlie Kirk's earlier public praise of Massie. For critics, the timing stood out because Erika endorsed a candidate with publicly known pro-Israel positions shortly after Massie's defeat in a race that commentators said involved significant support from pro-Israel donor groups. Supporters, however, argued that the two events were unrelated political decisions. The differing interpretations have continued to fuel debate online without establishing any single conclusion. She made no public statement about Thomas Massie, his primary race, or the government files he had been pushing to release. That silence became another major point of discussion for people closely following Erika Kirk's public decisions. For some critics, The contrast stood out because they compared it with her willingness to issue a full written endorsement of Spencer Pratt. They argue that this difference reflects the political direction they believe Turning Point USA is taking under her leadership, while others disagree with that interpretation. Another development that drew attention was the appearance of the VanCirk 2028.com website just one day after Charlie Kirk's passing. Its launch quickly fueled widespread online speculation, with some commentators suggesting it could point to a future political campaign involving Erika. Neither Erika nor Turning Point USA publicly confirmed any such plans, and those claims remain unverified. Even so, the timing of the website's appearance became a frequent topic of discussion, with many people noting it and asking questions about its purpose. More recently, some observers have also pointed to Erika's activity on X as part of the same broader conversation about her public role. They have highlighted reposts involving Riley Gaines and the issue of transgender participation in women's sports, a post praising J.D. Vance, and her endorsement of Spencer Pratt. Critics argue these actions show Erika expanding her public profile beyond Turning Point USA's traditional focus, while supporters view them as ordinary expressions of her political views. Those differing perspectives continue to drive debate without establishing any single conclusion. Supporters argue that Erika is simply sharing her personal views, just as many other public figures do. Critics see it differently. As a result, nearly every new post she makes continues to spark debate, with people arguing over whether her messages should be taken at face value or viewed as signs of a broader political strategy. The discussion shows no sign of slowing down. One commenter summed up that criticism by writing, "Your attempt to be a political influencer feels so disingenuous. You didn't post this much when Charlie was alive." While strongly worded, that comment reflects an observation many people have made based on her increased public activity. Since Charlie Kirk's passing, Erika's online presence, posting frequency, and overall visibility have grown significantly. Some observers say that increase is a natural consequence of leading Turning Point USA, while others believe it represents a deliberate shift in her public role. Critics also point to what they see as a contrast between the issues Erika has chosen to address publicly and the issues she has not commented on. In particular, they frequently mention the publicly discussed reports about donor pressure on Charlie Kirk, arguing that her limited public comments on that topic remain one of the most debated aspects of the broader conversation surrounding the organization. According to public reporting, Andrew Colvett said the text messages attributed to Charlie Kirk were authentic, and they were widely discussed across a range of conservative media outlets. Supporters of that reporting argue the messages provide insight into what Charlie believed was one of the biggest political pressures he faced during his final months. They also point out that Erika Kirk has not publicly addressed those reported messages in detail through interviews, public appearances, or social media. That absence has become a major point of discussion. Critics frequently compare that silence with Erika's willingness to release detailed public statements on other political topics, including her endorsement of Spencer Pratt. They argue that the reported text messages, which have been widely circulated and interpreted in different ways, deserve a direct public response. Others believe she has no obligation to comment publicly on private communications. Megyn Kelly has publicly discussed the issue in a measured, evidence-focused way, while Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens have also raised questions about it in their own commentary. Together, those discussions have kept the topic active across conservative media and online debate without establishing any definitive conclusion. The disagreement within conservative media over Erika Kirk's leadership of Turning Point USA largely centers on one issue. Supporters and critics continue comparing Charlie Kirk's publicly reported views during his final months with Erika's public messaging and leadership decisions, debating whether they reflect continuity or a different direction for the organization he founded. That question remains one of the biggest sources of discussion surrounding Turning Point USA. Megyn Kelly's role in that debate is also unique. She is not a Turning Point USA executive, a member of Charlie Kirk's family, or someone generally viewed as being in the same position as longtime friends and colleagues, such as Candace Owens. Instead, she is an independent media personality with her own audience, platform, and editorial judgment, which naturally shapes how and when she comments on major stories. Some critics have argued that Kelly's decision not to publicly distance herself from Candace Owens reflects a desire to avoid alienating parts of the conservative podcast audience. Others reject that interpretation, saying Kelly has consistently stated that she prefers to evaluate issues based on the evidence available rather than taking sides in public disputes. As with many aspects of this story, those competing views continue to generate discussion without leading to a single agreed-upon conclusion. Some commentators have argued that Megyn Kelly's "I don't know" response was a carefully balanced position, allowing her to avoid committing to a firm conclusion while keeping credibility with different parts of her audience. Others see it very differently. They argue that her decision not to publicly distance herself from Candace Owens, at a time when Ben Shapiro and other conservative media figures were strongly criticizing Owens, was a meaningful professional choice that carried real risks. That disagreement continues to divide opinion. What is publicly documented is that Kelly pushed back against some of the criticism directed at Owens and defended her ability to raise difficult questions without being personally attacked. During a period when commentators such as Ben Shapiro, Tim Pool, and others were sharply criticizing Owens' investigation and its impact, Kelly took a noticeably different approach. That distinction caught the attention of many people following the story. Kelly was not publicly endorsing Owens' conclusions. Instead, she argued that Owens should be able to examine controversial issues and present her reporting without being dismissed or condemned simply for asking questions. That position became another major point of debate within conservative media and across social platforms. That distinction is important, and many observers say it has often been overlooked in the broader disagreement across conservative media. Megyn Kelly has publicly said that, based on her own conversations and observations, she believed Charlie Kirk's views were changing during his final months. She has been clear that this is her personal assessment rather than an established fact. Kelly has specifically said she believed Charlie was moving closer to positions that commentators like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson had already been expressing publicly. Others who knew or worked with Charlie have offered different interpretations, and there is no single authoritative account of exactly how his views evolved during that period. Supporters of Kelly's perspective point to several publicly discussed events that they believe are consistent with her assessment, including Charlie's August 6th appearance on The Megyn Kelly Show, publicly reported text messages attributed to him, reports that he declined a trip to Israel, accounts of disagreements over donor support, and his decision to feature more anti-war voices at Turning Point USA events. Critics and supporters continue to debate how those events should be interpreted, but together they remain central to the ongoing public discussion surrounding Charlie's final months. Before Charlie Kirk's passing, Erika Kirk was not widely known for commenting on foreign policy, donor influence within conservative politics, or debates in Congress. She became one of the most recognizable figures in the conservative movement after stepping into a highly visible leadership role following Charlie's death. That sudden transition placed her under an intense level of public attention that few people ever experience. The scrutiny surrounding Erika has been extraordinary. Many of the questions directed at her involve deeply personal circumstances as well as major political issues. While some observers believe she should be allowed to keep certain matters private, others argue that topics such as the publicly discussed donor pressure, Charlie's reported political evolution, her lack of public comments about Thomas Massie, and her endorsement of Spencer Pratt go beyond personal grief. In their view, those are questions about the public direction of Turning Point USA and the leadership of a nationally influential organization. That is also why Megyn Kelly's response, "I don't know," received so much attention. Kelly emphasized that she was not making accusations and that she would need credible evidence before reaching any conclusion. Even so, because she was familiar with many of the people and events involved, some commentators viewed her willingness to leave questions open as significant. Others saw it simply as a careful commitment to following the evidence rather than speculation. Either way, her comments became one of the most widely discussed moments in the ongoing debate over Charlie Kirk's legacy, Erika Kirk's leadership, and the future direction of Turning Point USA. The debate online is unlikely to fade anytime soon. Many people continue to ask the same questions, and critics argue that until Erika Kirk publicly addresses the reported text messages attributed to Charlie Kirk and the issues they raise, discussion about the difference between Charlie's publicly reported final positions and the direction of the organization under her leadership will continue. Whether people agree or disagree, that remains one of the biggest unresolved topics surrounding this story. Now the question turns to you. Was Megyn Kelly right to answer, "I don't know," instead of reaching a firm conclusion without what she described as sufficient evidence? And do you believe the reported gap between Charlie Kirk's publicly discussed text messages and Erika Kirk's public comments deserves a direct response from the person leading Turning Point USA? Share your thoughts in the comments.